Spring is officially here and summer is just around the corner. And when it comes to Etsy print on demand, there is one particular niche that is consistently profitable, especially this time of year, wedding season. Specifically, this is the time when bachelorette group shirts really shine. The key to breaking into a niche like this, though, is to find micro niches and then leverage in demand styles. Now, a niche by definition is just a segment of a market. In this case, wedding is a broad niche theme because you are targeting a specific segment of a large market. A sub niche then for weddings is bachelorettes. Another sub niche of weddings might be bachelors or engagement gifts. Some sub niches are going to be low enough in competition that you can go directly for those. But since bachelorettes has become a very popular sub niche, we need to go a little deeper into what's called a micro niche. And a great way to do that for bachelorettes is by destination. So for today's video, let's dive into how I'd use a micro niche approach to break into this very profitable broader niche. In case we haven't met yet, my name is Mandy. I've started and stopped multiple entrepreneurial adventures in the span of more than a decade and learned a lot along the way. Now, as the owner of multiple six-figure businesses, including Etsy print-on-demand shops, my goal is to provide you with strategies to simplify the journey so that you can stop the overwhelm, start making progress, and thrive with your print-on-demand business. Now, the beauty of products in the bachelorette space is that it's never ending. Trends are regularly changing. People discover new places to have destination parties. There's always people getting married every year. So there's a steady supply of demand. And let's be honest, bachelorettes planning elaborate parties or long weekends in special destinations probably aren't as afraid to spend a little extra money on all of the accessories and matching items, making them a more stable audience even in a weaker economy. But how do we know which destinations make sense? Well, we think like someone planning a bachelorette party, and we go where they all go, Google. And we Google top destinations for a bachelorette party in 2024. We can scroll here. Any of these would be great options to click into. You can see a suggestion on here. What is the number one bachelorette party destination? You can see this Palm Springs result came from this website, so let's check that out. 15 best bachelorette party destinations article. Let's scroll and see what we find. This even says text the group chat and order those matching t-shirts. These bachelorette party ideas will make it a weekend to remember. Matching t-shirts are definitely popular for these, and that's the exact kind of recommendation encouragement we want to see. Because guess where their next stop will be? A search for matching t-shirts. So we can see we've got Arizona, Colorado, Vegas, Palm Springs from that result that we saw, Nevada. Keep scrolling, see what else. Another Florida, Napa Valley, Atlantic City, Nashville could be a fun one, and Charleston, South Carolina. Any of these would be a great place to start as a destination. I'm going to pick Vegas because I can think of some fun ideas for that with various themes. Then I'm going to validate my idea by heading to Etsy to see if there's any active demand. We can assume there's likely some demand for bachelorettes, so I'm going to specifically look at destination searches. But then when I look at actual listings in the results, I can see that there are several with clues for active demand. The in 20 plus carts, and even the 4 bought in the last 24 hours. Remember, for active demand, we're not just looking for bestsellers. We want to click into those first few pages and see what is actively getting sold and interest and demand on Etsy. And to do that, that is where we click into those listings. So definitely demand here. That means our next goal is to come up with a new idea and bring something new and different to the market. This is how you add value to your listing and separate yourself from others. If you are still stuck, this is where ChatGPT can come in handy. I've got a custom niche creator you can use if you have the upgraded version of ChatGPT. I'll include how to access that down in the description in case you don't already have it. Otherwise, all you need to do is plug in a prompt asking for phrases that will resonate specifically for your theme and audience. For bachelorettes, I like to give the ChatGPT further instructions that for each concept, I want a bride version and I want a bridesmaid version. If I ask for 20 or 30 variations, I'll usually get at least a solid couple that I can work with, and a few others where I can mix and match. For the actual designing, I'm going to head over to Kittl because I want to do a couple variations of the same design, and I want to make it a front and back design. Kittl's new infinite canvas functionality is going to make this so much easier. One of the things I love most about Kittl is that they have hundreds, if not thousands, of different templates that you can choose from depending on your niche or aesthetic or style. You can simply check those out and use them as a starting place for your design, so it can really get you started that much faster. For our Vegas bachelorette concept, I'm starting with this one as a template. It's got a girl in the middle and it's got kind of that retro, vintagey 40s, 50s vibe to it. And so I'm going to convert this with a few changes into a Vegas bachelorette style. So I'll start here. Instead of hello gorgeous, we'll say something like feeling lucky, I think is what I will put here. Then she's already got kind of this heart thing going, and so with the red, I actually like the color of this because it's very similar to some of the other Vegas styles that we saw by having those pops of red. So instead I'm going to go with that, and instead of a really forward casino style, I'm going to change this up here to Queen of Hearts. So it's kind of a play on a deck of cards, but also has kind of that female vibe to it. So let's try that and see what that looks like. That looks about right. I like the font combination that they have already in this template, so I'm going to leave that alone and then start working on the bottom section. And this is where I want to bring in the destination. So I'm going to change this part to Las Vegas, Nevada. And then I want to bring in some components where I know that there will be personalization as part of this design. And so I'm going to change this part here and just use it as a template. So we'll just use the name Sarah and we'll call this Sarah's Batch Club. And this ties in nicely from what I saw on Etsy in terms of that social club, society, that sort of vibe that's really popular on Etsy right now. And then I want to kind of play around with some of these other elements. I'm good with a 24/7, 365. Again, that kind of fits in with the whole casino nightclub aspect of Vegas. And so I want to get this centerpiece to really fit. Sometimes we're working with templates, and depending on how we are manipulating the elements and what we want as the text, sometimes it just requires playing around with it until you really get it the way you want it to. So in this case, I don't necessarily have a preconceived notion of what this final piece will look like at the bottom, but I know that I want to maintain the two elements on the side, the 24/7, 365, and I know in the center between that, I want this Sarah's Batch Club component. And so really it's just about making updates, making little tweaks here and there, playing around with fonts, and getting it to a place where it looks cohesive. And this is sometimes a piece that sellers struggle with because you don't necessarily know or have an idea of what it might turn into, but it really is about letting your creativity go and simply playing around with the design until it gets to a point where like, yes, that works, that looks good, and I'm gonna go with it. So we're gonna keep playing around with this. I'm going to bring in one of the other fonts. It's actually from that little of word at the top. And I'm going to use that here instead of the really bold font. And you see how this is going to fit much, much better in the center between those two anchor elements of 24/7, 365. I really want those to be on the outer edge, similar to what they were in the beginning. But now, because of the design of this, I've needed to make some updates. I've needed to make a few adjustments with this design to get it to really work for me and to be a really cohesive concept. And notice that we still have all of these kind of vintage elements. We are still using similar fonts, so we're not trying to add in too many to really compete with what's already there. We're just mixing and matching these elements so that we end up with a design that works. Once I have my baseline design done, I'm going to grab the title at the top and I'm just going to do Control C, Control V, and that's going to copy and paste my artboard. And when I drag it, now I have another design. It's an exact copy. It's on a separate artboard. But now I can have my designs side by side, and this time I'm going to create a bridesmaid version for this design concept. So the Queen of Hearts will be the bride design, and then I'm going to change this to Heartbreaker for the bridesmaid concept that will pair with it as part of a group listing. And just like that, I now have a pair of designs that I can look at, and if I wanted to change further, I could all in one place. Now, as I said before, I want this to be front and back design. So I envision the bigger design being the back, and now I'm going to go up and add a new artboard to the same design. And by clicking on that little square at the top, I can create a new one to any size I want. And at this point, I don't need it to be precise. I could adjust the artboard size to the right, but I'm just creating a square, and that will be fine. So this first one will be a design for the bride shirt, and so I'm just going to call this bride pocket, and that way I know which one it's for when I save it. And then I'm simply going to start searching for and adding in elements that make sense for this design. I know that for the bride pocket, I want to have some sort of element of a ring in there, and then I'm going to continue adding other elements so that I can have a nice simple design for the front pocket. Typically, if I have a large design on the back of a shirt, I'm not going to do anything super wild and crazy for the front pocket design. I try to keep it a little bit more simple with just a few elements, and then I'll have a name in there as well. As I've updated here, I also included a texture on this as well. And to do that, when you add a texture, it's over in the settings now where you can adjust that. And so I typically use an alpha mask. I lower the opacity a little bit so it's not super strong. And then I also updated the background color just so that I could see what it looks like in comparison to the rest of the designs. Now, sometimes when you're designing, you will get to it, and because you can see all of your design elements as a whole with this type of infinite canvas, I decided that it didn't necessarily match the way I wanted it to, and didn't pull in enough elements from the back design. And so again, this comes back to just playing around with your design and getting a feel for it and looking at it as a whole and saying, how do I feel about this? Does this look the way I want it to? Is there cohesion here? And then continuing to make updates here and there where it makes sense to. So for this one, I brought in some of the sparkle elements. I brought in the heart that was from the face on the top design. And so I'm just playing around with it and just creating this little bundle of elements that will be part of the pocket design. Much like with the designs above, once you've got it the way you want it to, again, I want to have a separate pocket design for the bridesmaid. So I'm just going to grab the title of this artboard. I can do a copy paste on my keyboard, and now I've got an identical one to work with. So I'm going to slide that under my bridesmaid option, change the name of the artboard so that I remember which one it's for when I save it. And then I'm going to update a few of the elements. I don't necessarily want a ring on this one because they're not the bride, so I'll pull that out and then simply replace it with a larger version of that little star or sparkle. And then we'll give this a different name for the template just so that we know it is a different one. Get that centered on our artboard so that it's ready to go. And then that is good for our designs. Now I have one more trick here before we leave Kittl, and that is sometimes when you're creating design, you want to see what it's going to look like on the mock-up. And so to do that, I'm just going to create a landscape artboard. It doesn't really matter what size because I know that my mock-up that I'm pulling in is a landscape size. So then once I add my mock-up into this artboard, then I'm just going to grab my images and I'm going to simply copy and paste them over onto this artboard and place them as though I would on a normal mock-up. To make it easy, I grouped all of the elements together. Sometimes you'll need to move your mock-up to the back of the artboard just to make sure you don't lose your actual design. And then I'm simply just going to adjust it, place it, and make sure it looks the way I want it to on what will eventually be the final product. So that looks good from the front. I intentionally grabbed one of my mock-ups that has both the front and the back. So let's take a look at the bridesmaid option. Again, I'm going to group it and then simply copy and paste it so that I can move it up to my mock-up and see what that looks like. That looks good. And then one more time, I'm going to copy and paste this artboard, bring that down so that I can get it into a side-by-side view. Now I'm going to do the same thing, this time with the bride design to, again, just make sure it looks the way I want it to on this particular mock-up before I exit and before I save my designs and get them onto the actual product. With this particular design, I might actually also test it out as a front-only design. So again, I could see exactly what that looks like. And it might be something that I offer one listing that has the front and back design, and then I have a separate listing that has just the front design. So both could definitely be great options and would be worth testing within the Etsy marketplace for this particular niche. The beauty of having all of these in one canvas on Kittl is now when I go to download, I can select which artboards I want to download. So I don't need my mockups, I don't need to download those just yet. You certainly could if you wanted to do them from here. Right now, I just need the designs. So I want all four, both the two back designs as well as the two pocket designs. I'm going to update to make sure my DPI is set the way I want it to, and then I always make sure I remove the background and optimize quality. And then I'm going to download these as a PNG. And even though they're different sizes, I can still download them all at the same time. The final step in the process is to select which product we want to have these on. And while there are lots of great options, I find that at least in the current marketplace, Comfort Colors does particularly well, especially in the bachelorette niche. They just have a really strong aesthetic that tends to sell really, really well. So with this, you can see I can do both the front side and back side. And so I'm going to upload my first design on the front pocket and get that in there. Typically for pocket designs, I shrink it down. I'm looking for about 4.5 to 4.8 inches, depending on the design and how much space I've left around the actual image. But generally speaking, that works really well. And I want to line it up pretty close to the outer edge of the collar. And then I want to have it just above the armpit as well. And it's typically a pretty good placement. Then for the back side, we'll repeat this process, upload from our download from Kittl, and then I want to make sure that this fills the space really nicely so that we have a nice strong back design. Get that centered, and that looks good. Because these are Comfort Colors, Printify does have a ton of color options, especially with SwiftPod, who I use for my comfort color designs. And so when we go to select colors, we can choose our different variants. We definitely want to make sure we have white and we can see all of our pricing and sizes available there. I'm probably also going to do an ivory. I think that will work really well as a contrast for this design. Some of these other colors might be a little bit too dark. I did like the way that this looked on pink as kind of a monochrome look. So I know that they have a light colored pink called Blossom within Comfort Colors, and that will be my final selection. And I think that will work for now. Could certainly do a lighter option for this design to work on darker colors if we wanted to have that. Otherwise, I'm set with this for now, and I'll do a quick preview, make sure the front pocket looks like it's aligned properly, make sure the back design looks like it's in a good place, and then from there, we simply need to save our product, and it's ready to go to Etsy. Now in today's example, I did a riff on the concept of the popular social club designs on Etsy right now. You could also go in the direction of Most Likely To, which could be a really fun group bachelorette in Vegas. ChatGPT would be a great way to get some unique ideas for that. One final tip I'll leave you with is that whenever you are trying to infiltrate a niche, or in this case, a micro niche, I recommend getting some volume of listings for that targeted segment, not just one or two, so that you can get some real data and traffic getting driven to multiple listings to see which ones will ultimately perform the best for your shop. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you want to learn more about my strategies for thriving in your print-on-demand business, make sure you've got the notifications turned on for my channel so that you don't miss out on any of my content. And in the meantime, be sure to check out my free print-on-demand course in the description, as well as my time blocking series here on my channel for an even deeper dive on the critical steps for success. Thanks for watching. I'm so glad you're here, and I'll see you in the next one.